Guys, what we have here is a 1985 Honda CB450 Nighthawk. Today, this thing sat for years and years, probably 10 years, and I only just now got the carbs off and cleaned them out and got it running. But the next big thing is going to be the fork seals here. These things are absolutely cooked. I know you can probably just tell by how much rust is on there, but I'll cut to what we're looking at suspension travel-wise here in a sec. Yeah, that's that. It's pretty bad. Not unrideable, but you know, I don't want to die. I want to live. So I'm going to replace those. We're going to need these tools right here. Fork seals. Obviously, you will need fork seals if you would like to replace your fork seals. I'm using automatic transmission fluid for the fork oil. I sell fork oil, but it's super expensive. It just calls for 10 weight on this particular bike, and ATF is between 7 and 10 depending on the brand. So I'm just going to go with that. I know some people will disagree. That's just what I'm going to do. You're going to need a 6mm socket end, whatever you call this thing. 6mm Allen. You want the 6-point. You're going to need snap ring pliers. There are snap rings inside here that you will need to get out. You will need a 10mm, the ever elusive 10mm. You will need one of these. I will probably get pissed and throw this, so I brought a backup just to be safe. We've got the ratchet and then a 12mm socket. I'm broke and don't have a 3/8 drive 12, so I'm using an adapter. If you don't have this part, it's not the end of the world. On this particular bike, I don't think that this is going to be deep enough to get this part here that does not have the fork. Most bikes have a cap on both sides, so you can take it off and the bolt's right there. This will work perfectly. This is a tool that you want on most bikes. This is the only one I've seen that does not have a cap on both. Most of the time you won't need this. This will suffice. That's going to give you a little more length to get up in there with that on the side that does not have the cap. This impact driver, going to be super helpful. Some of these bolts are very old and stuck in there, and you run the risk of rounding them out if you just sit there and crank on it with a ratchet. So I've got the impact driver with a 3/8 adapter. That will make quick work of some of the old bolts on here. So with all of that being said, let's get started. First things first, you're going to want to get this thing jacked up. That was sketchy. Don't be like me. Do this right. Now, next step is going to be to take the wheel off of the bike. Okay, so on the 85 here, the axle nut is a 19mm. So pull that off. Take the nut out. Don't lose it. I need that. And there is also a little washer in here that you're going to want to get out and not lose. Remember how everything goes. Let's go ahead and start my collection now. There we go. Go to the other side, take this cap. These on this particular bike are a 14mm. Loosen those, and that cap is now free. You've got this cap off here and this nut off here. You're ready to bring the axle out and bring the wheel down. So a rubber mallet is preferred, but this one is loose enough that I can tap it with the metal one and not mushroom the tip. So I'm going to do that. Okay. Get your foot under the wheel, something to hold the wheel up to make this a little bit easier, and voila, you are free. On this bike here, we have the Speedo. Speedo cable runs right into here, okay? Remember that this needs to go back in between the wheels. You want to button this thing back up and then realize that you have no speedometer and a cable hanging down over there. So, and take that out. We can, this guy here, 10mm. Now that the speedometer cable is out and you have wiggled the rotor out of the caliper out between the wheel ought to just come on out. Inshallah. And show you these bolts that I was talking about. These Allen keys. So there we go. There's one there. And the other, the one that was going to be tricky, is up in there. I don't think that my socket is long enough to get in there, so I'll have to use just the wrench. This is where the impact comes in handy. Rounding the heads out of these things would be an absolute nightmare to get fixed. Getting inside there to get a Dremel in there to flathead it, or whatever method you use to get stripped bolts out, it would suck so bad to try to do it on here. So that's where the impact comes in handy. That, or when you use your ratchet, give it taps with a hammer. It'll tick it out bit by bit, but it won't take the constant force and have you round the head out accidentally. So with these, oh jeez, with these you don't want to take them all the way out yet. There is a series of springs in here that you need everything to be together right now. So you're just going to crack them loose just a little bit. Put that up in there. Just like that. That's fine. Same with here. Is that going to work? I don't know if that worked. No, I don't think that worked. The way I did it, take the long side of the Allen key, get it in there, grab the elbow from the other side with vice grips, and then give her either a hit with a hammer to break her free or turn it. Mine luckily just kind of turned free, so nothing to worry about there. Just get those cracked loose. Just a turn, half turn is going to be just fine. We got 10mm bolts here. These are the drains for the forks, so you're going to want to crack those open and drain them. Also, on these, there's a little copper washer in there. Make sure not to lose that. You need that. So make sure to have your drain pan set. Yeah. And this might not even have any oil in it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So that's supposed to be full. Look at that. That is absolutely horrendous. So we're going to have to do some pretty serious cleaning on this one, but that's okay. Now for the other side. We might get lucky with this. Maybe there's more. Who knows? There's no winning this battle now that I've seen that fork over there. Oh shit. Okay, more was in that one. That one was better off than the other one. Good to know. So that's about what it should look like. I was not ready for that. Got both of them open and the screws set in a place that you remember. Give the forks a couple of small pumps and that'll help flush some of it out. Oh yeah. Just lift up on the fork a little bit. That'll help drain the, jeez, what's supposed to be fork oil and what is actually mud.
On the right fork here. Don't do it too hard or this stuff will splatter everywhere, as you can see there.
Just repeat this until it is mostly empty. So I'm just going to let those kind of drip for a little bit and get emptied. Now what we want to do is take this air hose that runs from, well, let's pull this cover off so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, there's an air hose that runs from here to here, from the left to the right fork, right to left, whatever, that connects the two forks, and then the fill valve right there. You want to remove this hose here, because we need to take this off in order to get the forks to slide through the channels and be able to be removed. So let's get to that. I'm not going to be able to show this part because this is kind of a tight area and I need both hands. Tip here, this is a 14, this is a 12. So take the 14 side off, take the left fork off first, because this one rotates freely, separate from the hose. So that'll let you take this side off and then rotate this side off. If you try to take this side off first, you're going to end up twisting it and twisting the entire line and possibly tearing something. So make sure to take this side off first. If it doesn't move freely at first, just throw some WD-40 on it, it'll free it right up. Got the hose off here, and what I realized is you need to take this nipple off also. You need to take that guy off because that won't clear the fork. This side is good, it's attached to the hose, so that's no problem. This one, however, needs to come off, and I believe that this is going to be a 12 like the other side, and it's not. It is a 10. We're going to go ahead and do the right fork first, so we're going to want to get the fender off here. Make sure the ratchet's in the right direction. And this is a 10mm bolt here. My ratchet is so broken. I have mangled this thing using it as a breaker bar one too many times. Okay, now we've got this off. We've got those disconnected. So what we're going to do now, before we break this free and this free, before we let the fork go, we're going to want to loosen this top cap here just so that we don't have to crank on it when it's off the bike and a huge pain. So let's go ahead and do that first. Now I'm just going to use vice grips. A crescent wrench, adjustable wrench would be best. But what you're going to want to do is grab around the top there and just crank to the left. Lefty, loosey. And there you go. The top is now loose for you. Now that we have loosened this cap here, we want to go ahead and loosen this 10mm here and this 12mm here. These are what hold the fork to the actual bike. So now that we've got those removed and everything, we've got the top cracked. Make sure before you take the fork out that you've got the top cracked so that it's not hard to twist once it's off the bike. You've got this cracked and these two bolts loosened. And obviously the fender removed. You can't take it off with that. But now that we've taken that out, with a little twisty, and a little, come on, you gotta talk to your machine, it'll do what you want. Come, twist, and voila. There is one of your forks. Now that we've got the fork off, the next thing we want to do is pull this top cap off. So let me get to that. To mention, there is a spring here. So when you're twisting this off, make sure to keep your hand on it and keep pressure on it as you're twisting it out, because it's going to want to spring out a little bit. It's not going to blow your hand off or anything. We're not talking coil springs, but it will want to spring out just a little bit. This thing is absolutely disgusting. This has nothing to do with your bike, but this is foul. This bike in particular, I don't know what happened, but it failed and it filled with water, I assume is what happened. So now you're just going to want to pull that spring out there. Make sure to keep the orientation correct. Know that some fluid might come out, so just be prepared for that. But I've done that. You've got a ring here, a little washer. Make sure to keep it in the right orientation. That just separates the two springs. And then your longer spring should magically, I know, come out. There you go. Got these springs out, and holy moly, I'm about to destroy my whole project here. Now that we've got these springs out and you remember the orientation, you want to go down to the end of there and take that bolt all the way out. Okay, so now that you've gotten the bolt out of this end piece here, you're pretty much there. Now, you just need to get this O-ring, or not O-ring, I'm sorry, snap ring off of the bushing there. I don't know if you can see that, sitting right in there. That right there with the two holes there, that's the snap ring that you need to take out. So that's where these come in handy, snap ring tools. Okay, so that was a nightmare, trying to get this thing out. I broke one of my things on my O-ring pliers, had to use a hook, broke the hook. Anyway, oops, finally got it out. Hopefully the other one won't be so bad since it wasn't so rusty. Now that we've got this out, we want to use a sliding action here to pull the old bushing out. Now, you get to see how disgusting the inside of this fork is. There is a little guy down in there. This part, this aluminum piece here, there's a very clear ring on this one. This is on the bottom of the ring. This is what this goes into. Now, down here we have a couple pieces. We've got the old bushing, which I recommend personally leaving on the tube. This way that when you put the new one on and you need to press it, you need to seat it in here, you can use this to hammer on. And that way that you can beat this one up all you want. It's the old one. So you beat that in, use it as a driver for the new bushing. That'll just make everything go smoother, make sure your bearing seat's right. So, or your bushing. Now, there is a little retaining ring here. This is stopping all of this from coming off. But you need this ring off and you need this ring off. So, just go in here, oops, go in here with a flathead Give it a little twist. Oops, it's all nasty. I probably should clean this before I start doing it.
Get that twist on push. Make sure you do this right side out, that way it comes down. Okay. Now that's on the whip. And twist and push. See what I'm doing here? I'm just opening up the gap. Twist and push. This screwdriver might get the maxi.
Oh, there we go. So, now that has come off. Keep that in order. Don't forget. Now, this will come off. This will come off. Now with this one, it's like a bowl kind of. So you want this, the rounded edge facing down. The flat spot, the flat inside part, fits against the bottom of the bushing like that. I'm going to clean everything out of here. I'm going to blast these with either rubbing alcohol or brake cleaner or something. There should be no rubber parts in here, so it's all safe to use brake cleaner or carb cleaner on to both tubes. Clean both tubes out completely, especially if they're this dirty. This is mud. I mean, this is just absolutely disgusting. So this is all got to go. So I'm going to do that real quick, and I will be right back. Okay, so now I don't have my hands clean, but I cleaned up everything for the most part. I cleaned out this tube. I had to put a wire down in there because down in here at the very bottom of the tube is where all the gunk collects, way down there. And it sometimes, at least in this case, there was a lot sitting down there. So I had to get a wire and paper towel, rig something up to get down in there to clean it, but make sure I can still get the paper towel out, and it is clean now. Went ahead and cleaned all this, ran some brake cleaner through the tube, through the top tube. Just kind of flushed it out since all the gunk was really sitting in the bottom. Not too terribly worried about that. Now one more thing on this one is where the bushing seats may be a little rusted and not rusted. Well, it may have rust from the bushing and the slip ring. This aluminum, it shouldn't actually rust itself, but it may have some stuff on the surface there. Just take some very, very, very fine sandpaper.
Today, Junior.
Very fine grit sandpaper, and just run it in here, clean that off, get some of the corrosion and such off of there so that the new bushing seats properly. Speaking of the new bushing, here we are. Let's go ahead and get this first one in there. In order to do that on this particular model, you have to put everything back together and then press the bearing in, or the bushing in, after you have reassembled everything. So, we're going to go ahead and take this bushing, slide that onto the fork. So this ring first, this goes up, sits at the bottom of the ring like that. And then we want to grab this one, which I did not clean off, so let me do that briefly. Okay, go ahead and put that on now. And then for our last retaining clip slash ring here, good nice like. And then this has a bit of an angled edge here, so you should just be able to kind of snap that back on there. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I've got this piece clean. Now this goes back down inside the bottom tube here. Now, go ahead and feed this down into the fork. Now we'll go ahead and use this old bushing. This is where this old bushing comes in handy. You put it on top of the new bushing and you just evenly tap around it. Just until, on this particular bike it works out nicely, it's just until you can't really hit it anymore with the hammer. But on all bikes it's just to where it sits right below where that snap ring sits there. Okay, that's done. Time to put the O-ring back in. The snap ring, Jesus. Okay, that went in a lot easier than it came out. So I got that in there with the new fork seal in, and we're set. So now what we want to do is go ahead and get this guy here, this bottom bolt, this Allen. I forgot to mention one thing. When I pulled this apart, it didn't come apart because it was so dirty, but there is a rod inside of the top fork, the top tube of the fork. With a rod and a spring. Pull these out, clean it while you're in there. Mine, I didn't think about it because it didn't come out. when I took it apart, which was odd. But take that out, remember that spring, remember the order, and then just put it back in. Use the old spring to push it down to the end there. And there we go. It'll come out of the bottom there. That's what that Allen screw screws into right there. Okay, so an issue I had that I just want to share with you guys in case you have the same issue is this aluminum cap here. So this aluminum cap, actually, you don't just drop it in there. You want to put it on the end of this. Now it might need a little bit of coaxing. What I did to do that, put an Allen through there.
All you gotta do is tap it in. I can do that.
Just give it a very, very light tap. Just till it bottoms out. That's all you need. The rest you can do by tightening it. And there you go. If you don't do that, you'll have a hard time getting the Allen through the bottom and all the way to the rod to pull it together. It's easier just to do it before you put it together. Now we've got that through. So just keep screwing it in. Don't go all the way tight quite yet. Wait till you just back it off a little bit once you get it finger tight. That way it's at least connected, stayed in, and it's not going to go anywhere. Now that we've got everything back together for the most part, nothing's tight yet. We've got the snap ring, we've got the new bushing, the snap ring in. Everything is back to normal in the bottom. The Allen head bolt is in the bottom here, but not tightened all the way. Just backed off a hand tight a little bit. Now at the top, we want the big spring in there. And then we want to go ahead and put your washer, the washer that separates the two springs. Go ahead and get that on there. Oops. I want to make sure this seats right, so I'm going to put it right on the edge and just watch this spring sit on it. And then, there we go. And now, you're golden. Getting this cap back on here, it's going to be a little tough, obviously, because it was spring-loaded when it came out. It's spring-loaded when it goes back in. So, just, you know, play with it. A little elbow grease, and we'll be back in no time. I got a little ahead of myself. So, you need oil in your fork. They have fork oil. So, take this back off. Hopefully you never put it on because you're watching this before you even started. And you're learning from my mistakes. So take this cap off, you don't need that on right now. Put your drain plug back in. Make sure you still have the copper washer on there. Alright. Drain screws back in. Now you can tighten the bottom one. That way you can get all the... Make sure there's a seal and nothing's going to come leaking through on you. Not crazy tight, just tight. There we go. That ought to do just fine. Just a couple ugga-duggas. Got that on there. Flip this back over. And now you're going to want to put fork oil in here. Each bike is different. I know the old CB450s took just over 4 ounces. The 750s and 550s, I believe, took 5.5 ounces. So I'm going to put about 4.5 in here. See how it is. If I have to top it off later, so be it. I'm not going to overshoot it. Put the automatic transmission fluid in here, the fork oil, if you're doing it right. So now it's time to put this cap back on. Let's see if I can do this on camera. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. We done it. Do that. Get that nice and tight. Doesn't have to be completely tight yet. You can always finish the tighten on the bike when it's bolted in. And there we are. Your fork has now a new seal and new fluid. You're ready to just follow the reverse process of taking it off, put it back on. You're good to go. Get it all done, get the other one done, and get back on the road. Happy riding.